I am Eva Wright, the author of the book series Lady Hawk's Life, the book that became 50 Shades of Grey. All of this information is on public record through the court system for criminal copyright infringement for Eva Wright versus E.L. James, Amanda Hayward, Jennifer Pedroza, and Krista Bebe in Tennessee court. I am prosecuting movie producer E.L. James for the criminal copyright infringement of my book series. I have also filed criminal fraud charges with the U.S. and the U.K. government for E.L. James intentionally misleading the public by placing her name in and on a mutilated, criminally copyright infringing, perverted, reckless fictional adaptation of my book, while trying to completely erase, cancel, and completely remove me from my own life story that's been for sale since 2005. While still using our real family names and our exact physical likenesses to sell her criminally copyright infringing, reckless fiction adaptation of my book, in order to misrepresent my book as their own work of fiction, and this abuse completely wrecked, ruined, and destroyed my original under the guise of fair use. Fair use is not for making millions and billions of dollars from if it completely destroys and then steals every single sale away from the original book. After this reckless infringement, it was then sent to a racist parody to further inflict even more damage to my book. Movie producer E.L. James contacted me about my book series March 15, 2005, saying how much she loved it. She was aware at that time that it was a real memoir already for sale and that we were living, breathing human beings and not fictional characters. Nobody, I repeat, nobody, not E.L. James nor anyone else, had any permission to use, copy, create a derivative, a fan fiction, nor parody, mutilate, pervert, destroy, nor affix their name in or on the work because it was already for sale under autobiographies, memoirs, and nonfiction. And especially not create any fictional adaptation that publicly shamed, blamed, ridiculed, slanderized, or insulted me and my family in such a reckless and destructive way. Delicate personal information and very sensitive things were mutilated, like my family's hospital information and my losing twins, to discover my deceased twins laughing and playing at the end of the pirated infringement. Mutilating and defamation of character of my elderly mother's information into a child-abusing child molester of young boys. And then after my hospital information was mutilated and defamated into the infringers, saying the bitch deserved it, and so many other insults geared toward my family and I. These four women quietly and intentionally wrecked my story and our lives. It is a violent and criminal abuse of power and abuse of our privacy rights to put our real family names and our exact physical likenesses out there. In fact, it's illegal and dangerous to pick apart my story in such a disgusting way. If these women didn't like me or my story, they could have reviewed it on Amazon and didn't need to crush me and ruin my book. We were targeted by this toxic group, and this is some sick, criminal, and disturbing stuff that a jealous and disgruntled ex-boyfriend would do for revenge porn, and not people that sat on my friends list for over a dozen years. E.L. James and her family sat on my friends list and my book's website's friends list for years and never said a word to me about my book becoming 50 Shades. These people sat there illegally monitoring me, watching me, and waiting for me to discover the criminal copyright infringement for myself, and when I discovered the infringement, the four women fled like cockroaches instead of paying me. This group took so much of my story that my AdSense account got shut down for too many fraudulent clicks from the same locations while stealing my intellectual property, and my cookie tracker takes pictures of every visitation and is very disturbing. I still own the website where every word came from. E.L. James removed my name from the work and placed her name into and on the work to intentionally create confusion as to the real authorship, in order to distort the facts that were already on record, and the authorship she chose to completely wreck, ruin, mutilate, and destroy my original book by moving the front of my story to the back and the back of my story to the middle, and then use this to cyberbully and publicly shame me, knowing that the original was already for sale. When asked on camera where she got the story from, she chose to save her own neck by saying internet research instead of crediting me properly from my book. As the original author, I had a right to know how my story was being used and what it was being used for, especially if any adaptation was used to so recklessly isolate, insult, shame, and deny me my royalties, and then turn my story into a disgusting dumpster fire. The fictional infringement received an abuse warning from DHS because the public could tell it was a story of surviving abuse. Abusers don't become good fathers because repeat criminal copyright infringers want them to. This toxic group has continued to stay on the run to avoid paying me and to continue to shame and blame me for their illegal piracy of my story. There is no such thing as a real non-fiction version of a story already for sale out there in the world, and a fictional version of the exact same story with the exact same characters being sold at exactly the same time on the Amazon servers. It's just not possible. My entire family's real names were used, our exact physical likenesses were used, as well as private details such as our physical address and our birthdays, which is against the law in every state and every country in the world, because it infringes on my copyright and our privacy and publicity rights. Our birthdays of June 10th and February 18th are still celebrated every year by E.L. James, not for the real human beings that we are, but as the fictional character doppelgangers that she claims to have created, which is sickening and disturbing. You can clearly see from our pictures that this heinous act was no accident, coincidence, or similarity, but was a deliberate act to inflict harm on me and my family and infringe every single sale away from the original book. By doing this, E.L. James intentionally caused public confusion and ridicule, humiliation, and public outrage about using the mutilated version of my abuse survival book and the people involved in it. She intentionally removed every single instance of the domestic abuse that I suffered from, that resulted in my partner going to jail for domestic abuse with criminal endangerment charges. I wish these people had never contacted me about my story at all, because they ruined my story and my life because they wanted to control the narrative. After contacting me about my book, E.L. James removed my name from the book and replaced her name into and on the work to intentionally create confusion as to the real author in order to distort the facts and the authorship. She then chose to completely wreck, ruin, mutilate, and destroy my original. I was trying to find these women to prosecute them. They were busy suing one another for more of my stolen royalties. Pedroza Bebe versus Hayward, Tarrant County, Texas. As soon as I contacted the publisher about the infringement, accomplice Amanda Hayward sold her home off in a one-day auction to avoid prosecution and fled to Sydney, New South Wales. After filing criminal copyright infringement charges on the four women, malicious hate mail came to my home during the lawsuit from the family of E.L. James. And after filing the lawsuit, the other women fled to avoid being prosecuted or paying me the royalties that I am owed. During a Superbowl commercial, February 1st, 2015, I discovered my book series had become 50 Shades of Grey. After discovering my book had been plagiarized and used in such a reckless way, my hair started falling out in handfuls, and I developed stress-induced lesions of nummular eczema, which is large half-dollar-sized spots all over my body from the constant harassment and slander. These women and this whole toxic group could have stopped tormenting me and harassing me at any time, but they chose not to. They could have credited me and paid me properly for the royalties that they owe me of hundreds of millions of dollars at any time, but they chose not to. Instead, they chose to stay on the run and not keep an address on file so that I could prosecute all four of them properly, and creating defunct companies that their own families resigned from after discovering and prosecuting them. They intentionally kept every single sale of my work away from me and intentionally set out to purposely mutilate my story and my life to fit their own abusive narrative. These women witnessed me being abused, and instead of helping me get out or even getting a license for my story, they chose to compound the abuse and truly enjoyed making me suffer unnecessarily by further throwing dirt on my family, kicked me even more when I was down, and then left me on the side of the road for dead. while they ran off with my story. They violated my trust and our privacy rights. This family has refused to leave me alone for years, constantly illegally monitoring me and turning my survival story into a dumpster fire. They must believe that they can continue to criminally copyright infringe on my story forever. And even worse than my story being ruined is the public's ridiculous comments that I've had to shut down, and the ridiculous fan fiction stories that I've had to completely shut down. E.L. James needs to clean up the dumpster fire that she has caused me. The dedication to me in the newest book is another slap in the face without paying me the hundreds of millions of dollars that she owes me in royalties for completely destroying my life and my story with her ongoing abuse. I shared my book with the world to create resources and help for other victims of domestic violence, and not to line the pockets of my frenemies and clout chasers. My story of surviving abuse wasn't a get-rich-quick scheme for people to hurt my family or to disgrace us into the ground with. I need help locating and prosecuting these 4 women properly because they refuse to stay in one location for very long or pay me the money they owe me, and to shut down a criminal copyright infringement. These people refuse to leave me alone. We haven't known peace in years. Justice needs to be served for my family and I. And every day that 50 Shades of absolutely anything is visible in any way to the public, it is criminally copyright infringing my story, and it needs to stop. I want my royalties, and I want justice for my family. My story has been turned into a hate crime against my family and I. Thank you.